Evening from 24-Hour News 8. Today, Governor Rick Snyder laid out his budget plans for the upcoming year, and those plans could mean changes for you and your money.
The governor is here in our studios. He's ready to answer your questions about that plan and the state of Michigan.
This is a special presentation from 24-Hour News 8.
It's your money, and in Lansing, the debate is just beginning about how it should be spent.
Governor Snyder is asking for billions of dollars to repair Michigan roads and infrastructure over the next decade. The big question for taxpayers, how will we pay for it?
Already, lawmakers have proposed higher gas taxes and vehicle registration fees known as use taxes.
You got a car, you're using the roads. You buy gas, you're using the roads.
The governor wants more money for early childhood education and to expand the use of technical schools.
In his last town hall here at Wood TV, the governor was asked about right to work.
Would you consider right to work as one of the ways to fix that problem?
Right to work is now Michigan law, but is being challenged in the courts.
And then there is unemployment. At nearly 9%, it continues to fall, but Michigan is still higher than the national average.
They are big issues that affect us all. And tonight, the governor will answer your questions live.
The state of Michigan. Your money, your voice. Live from the Wood TV studios. Your moderator, political reporter Rick Alvin.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to a very special town hall. This is the second time in 7 days that we have gathered your neighbors and friends from around West Michigan to talk about very important issues. Last week, we talked about moving beyond the violence. This week, we talk about what happens next for the state of Michigan. Governor Rick Snyder just today outlined his budget and spending plan for the next fiscal year. And a mere hours later, you come here to our studios to answer questions from our live audience, as well as people who will be sending in questions on our social media at woodtv.com. Governor, first of all, we welcome you. We thank you for being here, spending this time. We want to give you a few minutes to start talking a little bit about this budget process before you start taking questions from this audience. Thank you for being here.
Well, thank you, Rick. And I want to thank the studio, the station for doing this. I want to thank everyone for coming. Because if you step back for a minute, what's government all about? We don't define it very often. To me, we're a customer service organization. In the simple sense, all of you are my customer. And to have an opportunity to talk to you is critically important. So I view this as a great opportunity. And when you get into the question of a budget, quite often a budget can deter people. It's not something people embrace or find much fun when you talk about a budget. I know you don't at home. But the way I want to look at this, and the way we need to look at it, is not as a political process, not just about politics, but we're a family of 10 million people. I'm a certified public accountant, and that's the way I approach it, is to say, how do we do things financially sound? How do we live within our means? How do we prioritize what we're going to spend dollars on? And then how do we measure success to know we're doing the right things? And focus on things, because we shouldn't be taking a dollar from you unless we can show we can give you higher value than other alternatives in your life. And that's what the budget process is all about. And we've come a long way. When I first came into office, we had $1.5 billion deficit. We weren't paying our debts. Our mortgage essentially was ballooning. Since that time, what have we done? We've become financially responsible. We're paying down debt. We eliminated $20 billion of liabilities over the last year. We're balancing the budget. We're saving for the future. We're investing now in education, important things, early childhood, so many important things. So I give you a contrast. Just look at Washington. What a mess. No budget, no tax system that really works, and ballooning debt. In Michigan, we've solved all three of those, and we started from being 50 out of 50 of the states where we were just 2 or 3 years ago. We're the comeback state. Let's keep going, but let's have a good discussion. You're my customer. Ask good questions. Let's get fired up. Let's make a budget a living, exciting thing. I'm looking forward to this. So let's get going, Rick.
Governor, we appreciate that. I'm ready to get going, but before we do, I'd like to recognize some of our lawmakers who have joined us tonight. Some couldn't make it because it is kind of a nasty night out there, but thanks to those who can. Senator Dave Hildenbrand, who has joined us, a Republican from over on the Senate side. Joe Havman, who is a representative. Also the chairman of the Appropriations Committee. You two probably need to talk at some point. And Representative Brandon Dillon, a Democrat from Grand Rapids. Thank you all for being here. I know there are a lot of media folks that will want to talk with you as this process goes along. We may too, but it's good to have legislative leaders here because at the end of the day, there are about 150 of you when you consider everybody in the House and the Senate and the governor and lieutenant governor that have to make some big decisions. And one of those big decisions may be about fixing roads, which is where we're going to start tonight. So here's what I want to remind our audience. We want you to ask your questions. We'll get to as many of you as we possibly can. The governor is going to give concise answers. We're going to get to as many subjects as we possibly can. Let's start with this prospect. How many people in here think the roads in Michigan are great? Put your hands up. All right, let's move on to our first question. You have a question about roads. Let's talk about it. The governor has proposed doing something with roads that could cost $1.2 billion a year. You are John Weiss from the Grand Valley Metro Council, and you say what?
Good evening, Governor. It's good to have you here. Thank you for coming. Our family of 10 million people for years have had to endure bad roads, as has our business community. Our local governments are trying to plow our streets and repair our roads with less money and greatly increased cost. You brought it up last year in the State of the State. You brought it up again. You've made a proposal now. Do you think Michigan's finally ready to solve this long-term funding solution for our roadways? And what can we do as citizens of Michigan to help make that happen?
That's a great question, John, and thank you. And thank you for that passion about needing to address this issue. And Rick started the dialogue when he asked that question about, does anyone like our roads? I've done hundreds of town halls in Michigan. I've asked that question, and I've not seen a hand go up across Michigan. And to put it in perspective about what we need to do, this is a time to invest. And I'll be concise about this. There are really 4 layers to get this done. But what I'll start with is, if we treat this as normal politics, it probably won't get done, because that's been the problem since '97 when we last did something. The way to address this is to pretend we are this family of 10 million people. And let's pretend we're sitting around the kitchen table talking about our budget and our financial situation. And people are still struggling. Some of the people at that table still are having a tough time. But let me walk through the 4 facts with you. First, it's about $1.2 billion a year. That's a lot of money. It's about $120 a vehicle, $10 a month. If we do that for 10 years, that's $12 billion. If we don't do it, our roads will fall to disrepair by a dramatic percentage. The bill we would get at the end of those 10 years would be $25 billion. So this is less than half the cost of the bill we will get in the future if we don't do anything. That's a huge amount of money. The second thing is how many people have seen their car beaten up on the roads? We pay $81 more a year on average for vehicle repairs than the surrounding states. Now, I mentioned $120. If we get back a lot of that $80-some, that reduces the cost dramatically right there. That's the second point. Third point is 12,000 jobs would be created by those investments. That helps every Michigander. And the last point that you can't put a price tag on, it's about lives. And how many people here know someone that's lost a life in an auto accident? Raise your hand. Got a lot of hands going up. This could save nearly 100 lives a year, per year. So if we're sitting around the table as a family, this is just common sense. Let's not let politics stop common sense. Let's do what we all know is right, invest in our roads.
There are some in that 10 million family that may not agree, that want to pay more for road funding, even though they would agree that the roads aren't good. Troy, are we ready to go to a social media question? This is one of the questions that came in at woodtv.com. Susan Shaw is standing by with one of those questions that I think has a little different viewpoint.
Well, Rick, we've taken a number of questions from across West Michigan that has to do on the topic of roads, and a common one that has to do with taxes and their impact. Here's one from Bethany. She asks, I think we can all agree that Michigan roads are in need of a great deal of work, but the necessary funds, $1.2 billion per year for the next 10 years, have to come from somewhere. Do you feel that proposed plans involving raising registration fees, the gas tax, or some combination of the two is asking too much of Michigan families that are already struggling to make ends meet?
Susan, thank you. And Governor, that's part of the theme that we've heard. A lot of folks are saying, you know, you keep coming back to us for the money. And that was one of the things that we heard a lot when we first started talking about this road program. So what do you say to that question and many others?
Well, let's start with that. It's us for us. This is to make our lives better and to save us money. That's the point behind this. And when you go to that question, that's why we've done the proposal the way we have, about a combination of user fees. So the more you use the roads, the more you're going to pay. And that sounds like good common sense to me. So on the gas tax, if you're not out there driving around, you're not going to pay much. If you don't have a car, you don't pay anything. If you drive a lot, you're using the roads more, you pay more. That makes sense. Registration fees. It's based on value. So if you have a low-value vehicle, you got that used vehicle that you didn't pay much for, you're not going to pay much more in registration fees. If you have that high-end luxury vehicle, you're going to pay more. So this is very much correlated to how much you use the roads or what kind of vehicle you have on the roads. And so when I gave you the 120, that's an average. So if you're a mass transit person, no vehicle, you don't pay anything, that seems fair. Again, if you're at the high end and you're driving all the time in a luxury vehicle, you're going to pay more.
You've spent a